Chemistry Friday webinars. I am your hostess, Shelly Sanchez-Terrell, and it seems to be working okay. So I am in Istanbul, Turkey. There is nothing here to show you that I'm here, but I'm here, and we come from you wherever I am in the world, even if we have a little bit of time difficulties or technical duties. Thanks to American TESOL, we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years. It's actually about 11 o'clock here. So now you're in Turkey virtually. Tomorrow is an EdTech conference, and the great thing is today is also Digital Learning Day. So if you follow the hashtag on Twitter, DLDay, and I'll put that in the hashtag, then you'll find lots of great and wonderful technology ideas and pictures from teachers all around the world. So we are participating in DL Day, American TESOL is, and you'll get a recording. You already have the slides. You already have all the bookmarks and everything that you can access after this. And if you are part of the esltech.com course, then you will actually be filling out a script for an audio project today. So we'll be looking forward to that and the amazing assignments that you create with that. Audio projects are really wonderful, and they're one of the things that teachers are actually quite comfortable with, because what happens is with an audio project, most teachers have done this type of project before in the past, because we've had recording devices for a very long time. But even before we had these great things here, and even before we had TV, there was radio, and families used to gather together, and they used to sit down and they used to listen to the events happening around the world. And now we can gather virtually. You can see me here, and we can listen this way. But radio, even if you didn't have the face-to-face connection, radio was one of the most important ways to communicate and to really feel like the whole world was connected before the internet. So I think that when you do projects and you do it with the mindset of taking all of the great things that happened in the past and trying to produce that forward, then you really can create some amazing things. So the great thing is that you can record audio with a regular cell phone. You don't even need a smartphone, or you can even find recording devices. I remember when I was in college, I used to always have one of these little recorders, so I could record lectures and I could get ideas. And when I was teaching one of my first English language learner classes in high school, I would also try to record the lectures and send it to them. Now, this was before you could, I really had a website and everything like this. So there's definitely different things you can do. You can do something as small as recording an announcement. Oh, and the great thing about radio is if you do, and they're called podcasts too, you could have, if it's ongoing and people can subscribe to it, then that's what makes it a podcast, okay? They have to have the ability to subscribe to it. If you do it 1 or 2 times and you really don't even do one that people go to and visit regularly, but you do a one-time thing, then it's whatever that audio project is. And you can do lots of audio projects. So it could be an ongoing project that you do with your students. And for English language learners, it's especially important, because what are the skills that we practice? Well, your students will practice listening skills. They will practice speaking skills, but they'll also practice reading and writing skills. I'm going to show you how to do that. And these are all things that I've also put in my Learning to Go book. So we'll look at that in a bit. But there are many things you can do. If you want to do an ongoing one, you can have your students do something simple like have class announcements. It doesn't have to be very long. The other great thing about audio is that it has less bandwidth usually than video. So if you have a video, then one of the things you're going to have is where your video is probably often it takes too much bandwidth, and it's harder to upload those projects. But when you have audio, there's so much more you can do, because the bandwidth it doesn't have all of that video. You can have class debates, you can have radio shows, you can do little commercials, you can do docudramas. So I put a few ideas here, but there are tons and tons of ideas. If you've ever heard it on the radio, you can do contests, you can do a morning show. Instead of an announcement, your students can have a morning show. You can do radio dramas. And in the UK right now, they have the Arches. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're a long-time radio show. NPR. NPR has many different types of it's a slash between a show and a podcast, because you can still subscribe to it. But a lot of us know about Garrison Keillor, right, from Lake Wobegon. So there's definitely, you can broadcast news, you can review products, you can review restaurants, you can review different types of assignments, you can do movie reviews, you can do interviews. So you can give your students, if you want them to do a project where they're constantly doing different types of audio projects, and you do have something for your students, you can give them choices if you want, and then you can evaluate those specific choices so they can decide the content. And I'll show you what are the steps, so that way you evaluate all. But you can give them a choice. You don't have to just give them one type of podcast. You can say, look, here are a list of podcasts. You can decide. Let's say you wanted to do reviews. You can say, okay, all of us are going to do podcasts. It's going to review something, and we're going to give great ideas. Maybe we're going to review Web 2.0 tools. So your students choose the contract, the content, and or you can say it's an ongoing. Hi, sorry about that. I didn't realize you couldn't hear me when it took it off. But yeah, I think the picture is too much for, I mean the video, so we'll just go with audio instead. See, audio is less bandwidth than video. This is the point I was proving. So, when I was working with the teachers in Venezuela, okay, so their first language is Spanish. So you can imagine when you pick the podcast, the first step is get them to listen to a good example. And Peggy George has been showing you some good examples of teacher podcasts. What I did was in Venezuela, I showed them podcasts, two different types. I showed them one from the 1950s, I think. And then which was a radio recording. It was a radio show recording. And then what I did was I also showed them one from Invisibilia, which is one of my favorite podcasts. And podcasts are in now. There's so many. So I showed them a segment of that. It was really great because Invisibilia, they spoke slow enough at points to where they could understand what was happening and what was going on. And I had them take notes. So you could do like a listening exercise at the beginning. One of the best resources that I have found to find these old recordings. So you might say, Shelly, well, where did you find these old recordings? Well, I actually did it with the OTR broadcast. And what it'll do is it'll take famous broadcasters from way back when. And what it does is it actually gives you little segments that you can listen to. So you can find plenty of examples of some of the best broadcasters all over the world. So I'm going to go ahead and put that as well. But you have Tom Murrell, you have lots of different people in broadcast news, women as well. Now, the first one didn't show the women, but there are. And it gives you story segments. It gives you, like, when they were reporting about sinking ships. The one we listened to was when one of the ships was sinking. And I didn't tell them what the news was. What I did was I had them listen. And what we did was they came up with the news. They had to guess what the news was according to the podcast. So we listened to the broadcast and we listened for clues. And I gathered all the clues from the class. I said, what did you listen about? What did you listen about? And then we came up with what was the news. Then we checked it out because they also give you scripts. So it's great for listening exercises. Another one is there's plenty of different ones. I list them in the Pearltree, which Peggy George has been so great and put earlier. But when you go to the Pearltree, you'll be able to see this one as well. This one is particularly good for kids as well. This one has the American Art Institute has taken podcasts from grades 3 to 12. So that means you have anywhere from 10 years old all the way to, you have it from 10 years old all the way to teenagers. So if you teach any of those age groups, you can actually go to this particular website and you'll be able to see the American Art one, examples from students. And I think those are very powerful examples. I think that when you're able to show that other students did it, that your students will be able to get an idea of what's involved. Digitalpodcast.com, another place to find some of the top podcasts and educational ones as well. You can also go to podcastdirectory.com and that'll give you different genres. So if you want, that's a great thing about a podcast is that when you go to a podcast directory, you can find a podcast on anything. You can find one on math. You can find one on science. You can find one on history. There's great ones on history. I go to my iTunes account, and what I do is I try to find ones that I listen to a variety of myself. And actually, that's what I do with my students. I play for them the ones that I listen to. I listen to a lot more than this, but these are some of the most popular podcasts all over the world that millions listen to. So for me, it's important that I get my students to listen to different podcasts. And we have done a bookmark for you in the Pearltrees, one that talks about podcasts specifically for English language learners that they can listen to. There's 6 minutes English, there's 6 minutes Spanish. I mean, there's different ones, especially for language learners themselves. But these are the ones that I like to play samples from. I don't play the whole podcast because sometimes the podcast is an hour long. But Serial is one of the really good ones. It's about a reporter who is interviewing and gathering resources, investigative journalism. And what she does is she's trying to figure out if this one young teenager killed his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend. And he's been in jail for many years. So it was actually the #1 podcast last year. And I think they're going to come back again. So it's something your students could get interested in. It's something where, especially for teenagers and those older, they can follow along and decide whether this guy is guilty or not. So a lot of different, and they pick up clues and stuff as well. This American Life always has different great topics. They have a censored version. So, because sometimes if someone curses or anything like that, but they have a censored version. So, it is possible to play it for older students. Invisibilia, Radio Lab, usually they talk about science stuff, so I find that they're okay and safe to play most of the time. And the TED Talk Hour, full of really fantastic things on the brain and success, and it just really thought-provoking. So you can find a lot on the iTunes directory, but you do have to check the content first, because those aren't made for students. So the ones previous did. So one way, one of the activities or projects I was telling you about for audios is really simple. You can get them to do interviews throughout. And that's one of the ones that fits every single subject, because you have to imagine that when you're doing a podcast, or if you're doing a radio project, you can always interview different people in your field. In fact, yesterday while I was on the plane, and I had forgotten my Neil deGrasse Origins book, it was fine because I actually found a Neil deGrasse magazine. So I will actually take that out and show it to you. Because I thought it was quite interesting as well. So maybe this will allow me to show my webcam. I'm not sure. Well, we'll take it by ear. But I was in the plane and I got to see Neil deGrasse Tyson. And the reason I'm telling you this is because he's now decided the interview is about Neil deGrasse Tyson actually starting a new TV show. Where he has a radio show, he has a podcast. You can kind of see Neil deGrasse Tyson there. And he does it on science. So you can definitely do it on math, science, chemistry, geography. You can find people and experts in the field that really can talk about the concepts. Now, on this particular one, he's doing a new talk show. And Peggy's saying that she saw him interviewed on TV. They could even interview him on a podcast, and I mean on a they could do it through a blog, or they could do it through email, or they could do it through a Twitter chat, and they can report and do an audio report on the internet. But there are certain skills that are required when you do podcasting and interviews in general. So when you're going to do interviews, storycorps.org, they have a podcast, but they also have great resources on how to develop those questions. What kind of questions? And that's always great for teaching what? Grammar. Teaching the grammar of writing questions. How do we write a good question? What are the things that we want? Let's say that they're going to interview Neil deGrasse Tyson. We can say, what are the things? What do they have to do first? They have to do some research on who they're interviewing, right? And then they have to go and they have to say, these are the questions. This is what we want to discover. This is what we want to find out. And then they go back and they develop questions for that. What are the kind of questions that would start giving us information on that particular topic? And then they can think about the length. Now, I would say, and for you, grading as well, keep it short. You don't want any of these podcasts to go over. Remember, and if you can do it in groups or pairs, that's better, because the way to grade is you have to listen. And if you're listening, that takes a lot of time. It's not the same as perusing over something. So that's why I think it's really important that these are considerations you take. So there's different types of things that happen when you are doing an audio project. There are different steps to the process. One is that you have them brainstorm. You give them an interview project, audio project, then who are they going to, you can give them the topic. You can say, okay, we're doing it on inventors, modern day inventors. And so they have to go and they have to brainstorm. Well, who do we know that's invented something lately? Did you see something? And different things like that. Um, Oh, that would what storycorps.org. Peggy asked the question, do you have a list of great interview questions students could use that work in many different situations? Storycorps.org does. That's where I found it. And then I have some in the book, Learning to Go. But there's research. So when they brainstorm, they also research. Or they can brainstorm, where are we going to find inventors? Where are we gonna find? Well, maybe we can call a museum. Maybe we can call a journalist. So it's a lot of things. Give them a couple of minutes to brainstorm. I usually do 2 to 5. Put it on a timer, and then after that, they go and they research. They can either research in a lab. You can take them to the library and have them research there. But give them time to research. They'll need a good chunk of time. But with you only, it's good that you do timers. So it's really important that when you're doing different types of projects, I'm going to show you my nifty little timer here. So here we go. It's on the clock, so it's very easy, but I put timers on everything. So it's important that you put timers. You don't have to do it on a phone. You can do a kitchen timer. I actually think the kitchen timer is a bit more effective. But when you do it, the timer, you might want to do 10 minutes and say, okay, you have 10 minutes here. And that's how you keep them focused. That's how you make sure. After that, you have to do this as homework. So a lot of times they'll get their research done in the class, and you won't have to worry so much about them going off research. Yes, I always end up using my phone too because it's always with me. Scripted. It's important that you have them write down and plan. First, it helps them to get the recording done quickly. It helps them fix their grammar error. It helps them rehearse and rehearse. My students, when they were doing it in Germany too, they rehearsed and they kept re-recording it because they wanted to make sure their pronunciation was right, their enunciation. They wanted to make sure that their grammar was correct. So my students by themselves wanted to correct their interviews and they interviewed each other. So then they recorded, they edited, they remixed it. I'll show you what all of that broadcast is. So that's a general outline of what goes on. And I even have in my book, Learning to Go, you can always check one called In the News, and it gives you the script, it gives you the rubric to grade, it walks you through different resource sites, and it gives you apps, a bunch of apps that we'll cover here today as well. So I have scripts that are in Learning to Go, my book, the gum.co one, but there's also some by readwritethink.org that are amazing. So readwritethink.org gives you handouts, like paper handouts that you could just print out, but then it also of scripts, but it also gives you ones that you can do through a computer, so it's your choice, and that's what I love about different sites that I love about Read Write Think is they're for the teacher to teach something digital because we're recording the audio. This is a digital project, okay, but it also gives you that backup plan in case you have problems with the internet, problems with the computer, you don't have a computer lab, you can still do this. So how do we do it? Well, you can go to readwritethink.org, do a search for audio or do a search for podcasts, and you'll find these wonderful resources that I've also put in the Pearltrees. So the individual sites are in the Pearltree, but there's evaluating the audio before listening and after listening. There's how to do a book review podcast, and you can follow that same one your students if they're doing, for example, a movie review or product review or food. You can have foodie. Sound effects practice as well. So they have different types of things your students can do. And get your students not only to record themselves, but it's great to have your students produce some different kind of sound effects. And it was really great in Venezuela. They were reporting about some of the politics. They were reporting about going to the grocery store and how in the country it takes you literally 2 hours sometimes to buy different things because they run out. They run out of toilet paper and things like this. So in Venezuela, they told two of this. They worked in Paris to do this, and the students said, "Okay, gather together and start chanting like your protest," and that became their background noise for reporting. So it was really, really cool to be able to listen to that. How do you remix? Well, remix means an editing. If you're gonna, okay, so sometimes your students might go and they might have to go record, like you saw that girl in the previous one. Well, the girl in the previous one here, she's outside. So she may want to record this and then she may want to go back and she wants to add that to another recording. So what we do is you have to use something like GarageBand or Audacity. If you have a Mac, you can use GarageBand. If you have a PC, then you use Audacity. Audacity is free. You can download it, but it gives you an editing board. This is what an editing board looks like. And what it lets you do is it lets you cut out things you don't want. If your students made a mistake, it lets them re-record. It lets them add different sound effects. It even gives you sound effects that you can add. So it's really important that you have this. There's another one called Soundation, and there's another one actually that I don't have here that's called Soundtrap. And I don't know if Soundtrap, if it's soundtrap.org or it might be, I'm going to say it's Soundtrap, I'm going to say .com, that could be wrong. But Soundation as well, I believe all of these are actually on the Pearltree as well. Salutation is a part of Google Hangouts as well. So you can even have a podcast that you do as an international project. Your students can remix it, they can cut it, and they can edit it together. Now, when they're editing and remixing together, all of these are free programs, by the way. I do want to say that Soundation and GarageBand both have apps. So they can do it within their mobile device as well. That's very cool. One of the easiest ways to get a sound sample, and Peggy has been talking about the BAM Radio Network, and that's actually one of the free resources I'm going to share in a bit, but the BAM Radio Network is really great because to get these interviews, how are you going to get interviews? What if you have that your students have to go and in your students have where they maybe you want them to record it at home. Well, vooguru.com is a great way. It's so easy to do. You don't need an account or anything. Your students go to vooguru.com. All they do is click record, and then it gives them the option. It says, who do you want to send it to? They can email it to you, and it's that easy. It's very simple. It's very easy. Of course, they're going to need a microphone and a computer. It only works on a computer. It doesn't yet work on a mobile device. Let's talk a little about remixing. So a question that somebody, a question inside the chat box is, do you have to worry about copyright violations? And if you're remixing audio from other people, yes, you do. And this when you integrate, or we're a remix generation. We actually did a webinar on Creative Commons. So when you are adding other people's sound effects or their, and there's tons of free ones out there, we need to do it responsibly. And the way you do it is you go to these different sites, ccmixter.org, which is also a free app as well. And they give you licensing rights. They give you Creative Commons, and you attribute. Attribute means you give them credit, and you give them credit specifically the way that they have asked. Freesound.org has different sound effects. You have Sound Bible, all of these things. You can find them if you go to my Creative Commons Pearltrees but I've also added them in the audio projects and the podcasting one as well. So these are ways to get free samples, and you just attribute, you give proper credit the way that the site tells you. And now, after you edited it and everything's perfect, and you've organized it, you script it, and your students are going to want to broadcast it, how do they do that? Well, there's lots of choices for you. A few of my favorite are Audioboo, which is an app on the web. It's through everything. I love it, and it cuts it down to 10 minutes, which I have to say, the great thing is that if you have Audioboo and you just want it, and iPadio is actually one of my favorites. It's a little bit longer. It's easier. You can even do iPadio on a phone, so it works on your browser. It works on an Android, iOS, even though it says iPadio. And Audioboo too works on multi-platforms, so it's great if you're doing BYOT, which is bring your own technology or bring your own device. It's fantastic for those. Podomatic, you have as well in different ways to do it. It puts it automatically in iTunes and everything like that, so people can get it in different ways. And then there's SoundCloud. I love SoundCloud because it allows your students to comment and also click where they're commenting, which is awesome. The thing about it is, on all of these, it's not like any of them. Podomatic is probably the safest if you're doing very young learners, but the thing is that it's really important. All of these, like Peggy said, she brought up, you can embed it. So then you can go back and you can embed it on your own site and things like that. But I find with SoundCloud, if you look through for the other samples, they have some questionable material. So that is something that you should look out for. And of course, the BAM Radio Network. BAM Radio has very short podcasts, 12 minutes on many of them, some even shorter. They're like little sound bites sometimes. So if you want something really quick and everything, you can start your own show. You can even start it with your students. So, and they help you a lot. They show you how to record phone conversations to get them up there. And Errol, who's part of Aerosmith, and then also Janine, are very good with helping you through it. What kind of apps can we use? Well, I showed you a few apps already, but here are some if you want to do a one-time audio project, okay? So here are the ones. Talking Ben and Tom News Reporter. It's a bit of a video too, but your students will have funny voices and you can hide their faces and they can report the news that way. It uploads it to YouTube. Yak It for Kids. It's still an audio project because they can make any of their pictures have mouths. And it's safe because it's for kids. They make sure it says Yak It for Kids. Unfortunately, it's only in iOS. Here's my little baby who popped up, Roscoe the Pug. And if you actually go to my Twitter and Instagram, you'll see his grandma bought him a tie. So he actually has a tie now. But he has done Yak It's, and he also does Chatterpick Kids. So Chatterpick Kids, the same principle. You put a mouth and you can make it talk. The reason I put Yak It for Kids first is because if you do Yak It for Kids, you get more than one slide. So you can have more than, it could be a longer recording. Teachers, I've not tried it myself, but teachers love Adobe Voice. It's iOS and iPad app. All of these are free. And it's really great, the different features that you have. You can add images as well. The Tell About This iOS app, where it has audio prompts. So in case you just want your students to start practicing, this one is very good for projects because it gives them a picture, and it gives them it says, for example, the prompt is, imagine what it would be like to have a robot friend, and then they just record their audio very quick. It's an app. It's an iOS app. Bunsy has this new iOS iPad app, and it's free, and it has different slides you can make. So you can, it's better than PowerPoint. You can have them do these presentations. And it's amazing because you can record audio. You can add stickers, drawing text, upload pictures, backgrounds. Very easy to use. Amazing app. There. 30hands.com, same thing. You can drag and put in pictures, and you can add audio. And you can find many more apps. I've actually have over 50 that I've done. And you can find them if you go to the Pearltrees. The Pearltrees is going to be your answer to find all of these different types of podcasts, projects, examples from other teachers. Even this one where it says 1,001 podcast ideas. So there is never an audio project. There's an audio project for you out there. It also has my ListLee that has audio recording tools and apps. You can see here that I have over 59 bookmarked, over 59 resources. Every time I come to one, I just put it on there. And then, of course, you can go to resources for listening. It'll give you podcasts, listening activities, and more. So thank you so much for coming today. Sorry about the time difference. But yes, exactly. You can. There's more than enough projects to go around. So you can, anything you need, you'll find it there. A rubric for podcasts, you'll find it. And great presentations on podcasts, especially for your age group. So thank you so much for coming. I have to get to bed because I have a keynote early in the morning, and it's 11 o'clock here in Istanbul. So thank you so much for joining me wherever you are in the world. Have a great day.